The world does not end with a scream. It begins with a tear. Cloth ripping under strain. Flags that once shared wind now pulling in opposite directions. Threads snapping like nerves under pressure. The Atlantic no longer a bridge, but a fault line. And the idea of the West splitting down the middle, in full view of a stunned planet. This is not a misunderstanding. This is not a policy dispute. This is the moment when the United States and NATO stop pretending they are the same thing. When alliance language collapses under the weight of raw power, and the map everyone memorized quietly dies. Greenland sits there, cold and bossed, pretending to be empty. Ice, rock, silence. But silence is never neutral. Under that ice lie minerals, rare earths, shipping lanes, missile arcs, submarine routes, and the shortest line between nuclear powers. Geographies does not care about feelings. Geographies only cares about leverage. Washington has always understood this, so has Russia. So has China. Greenland is not land. It is position. Whoever anchors Greenland controls the northern door of the planet. The crisis does not begin with tanks. It begins with a sentence. A blunt sentence. A transactional sentence. The kind that sounds absurd until it doesn't. The United States announces it will secure Greenland's strategic future. Denmark says no. NATO hesitates. Hesitation is interpreted as defiance. Old footage resurfaces. Donald Trump, smiling, saying the quiet part out loud years ago. We're interested. People laughed then. They don't laugh now. Because history has a cruel sense of timing, and jokes age into doctrines when pressure builds. Diplomacy scrambles. Emergency summits. Carefully worded statements that say nothing while meaning everything. Europe insists Greenland is not for sale. Washington insists security cannot wait. The language of partnership erodes, replaced by the language of necessity. The United States frames it as protection. Europe hears expropriation. NATO finds itself staring at its own contradiction. An alliance designed to stop war now hosting the seeds of one within its own charter. Troops begin to move defensively. Aircraft reposition as a precaution. Naval task forces drift north, not pointing guns, but not lowering them either. Every move is legal. Every move is provocative. Every move shortens the distance between accident and catastrophe. This is where command chains begin to fracture. NATO officers receive conflicting priorities. US commanders answer to Washington, not Brussels. Shared intelligence slows. Trust evaporates faster than ice under a blowtorch. Someone misreads a radar return. Someone locks a fire control system for half a second too long. Someone panics. The first shot is not fired in anger. It is fired in confusion. The unthinkable becomes procedural. NATO air defense systems light up against US aircraft. American cyber units respond by blinding European logistics networks. Ports freeze. Fuel data disappears. GPS signals degrade. The modern battlefield opens without a single explosion. Markets feel it before cities do. Algorithms don't wait for confirmation. They smell uncertainty and run. Stock exchanges plunge in minutes. Trillions vanish. Not destroyed, just reassigned to fear. Insurance collapses. Shipping contracts dissolve. The world's economic circulatory system seizes. The dollar stumbles. The euro fractures. Investors don't ask who's right. They ask who survives. Capital flees into anything that looks like stability and finds very little. Trade routes choke. The North Atlantic, once the busiest artery on Earth, becomes a risk zone. Cargo ships idle. Energy prices spike. Food futures explode. Countries that have nothing to do with Greenland begin rationing bread. Supply chains that took decades to optimize unravel in days. Factories shut down not because they were bombed, but because one missing component never arrived. Modern civilization reveals how thin it really is. Meanwhile, Russia watches us in silence. This is the moment every Russian strategist wrote about, but never expected to witness. The Atlantic Alliance eating itself, not from invasion, but from internal rupture. China does not comment either. It does not need to. Beijing studies patterns. It measures response times. It observes how quickly treaties turn into suggestions. Taiwan watches closely. So does the South China Sea. The world is no longer bipolar. It is opportunistic. Power vacuums do not remain empty. They attract predators. In Europe, panic is quieter but deeper. NATO citizens wake up realizing the shield they trusted now has a crack running through its center. Governments activate emergency powers. Borders dictate. National priorities reassert themselves over collective ones. The Baltic states feel exposed. Poland France talks about autonomy. Germany talks about restraint. Everyone talks, nobody agrees. Back in the Arctic, the cold does not care. Missiles do not freeze. Submarines slip under ice caps that no longer protect anyone. The shortest flight paths between nuclear powers run directly over Greenland, and everyone knows it. This is where escalation stops being theoretical and starts being mechanical. Alert levels rise. Codes are checked. Redundancies tested. Men and women sit in concrete rooms waiting for orders they hope never come. Civilians feel it last, and then all at once. Power outages, bank limits, flights cancelled indefinitely, news feeds looping the same 3 sentences because nobody actually knows what comes next. Families argue over leaving or staying. Soldiers text loved ones messages that are too calm to be honest. Children sense something is wrong even when adults lie. The information war becomes total. Narratives harden. Europe frames the US as imperial. Washington frames Europe as naive and compromised. Truth drowns in volume. Every side believes it is defending stability. Somewhere in the middle of a chaos, a voice breaks through the noise. This is where you are asked to choose how you see the world. Not as headlines, not as slogans, but as systems under strain. If you're here for clean thinking in a dirty geopolitical reality, now is the moment to subscribe. Because what follows next will not be explained clearly anywhere else. The fighting never becomes cinematic. There are no heroic charges, just precision strikes, blackouts, and long periods of nothing punctuated by terror. War between peers is mostly waiting and failing infrastructure. Greenland's population watches foreign soldiers patrol land that never asked for them. Local politics vanish under global pressure. Autonomy becomes a footnote in someone else's security doctrine. Denmark protests. Loudly, it does not matter. Small countries don't lose wars because they are wrong. They lose wars because physics favors mass. Inside NATO headquarters, the mood turns surreal. The alliance still exists on paper, while actively tearing itself apart in practice. Lawyers argue over Article 5 interpretations while missiles sit fueled and waiting. The United States realizes something too late. Winning militarily is not the same as winning strategically. Even if Greenland is secured, the cost is irreversible. Trust, once broken at this scale, does not regenerate. Europe realizes its own mistake. Dependence always feels efficient until it becomes dangerous. Strategic autonomy sounds abstract until someone else holds the switch. Across the global south, leaders reassess everything. If the most powerful alliance in history can fracture this violently, then guarantees mean nothing. Neutrality becomes fashionable. Regional blocs harden. The world fragments. Energy alliances redraw themselves. New payment systems bypass old ones. Sanctions lose their bite when everyone is busy surviving. The post-World War II order finally collapses. Not with a bang, but with a legal dispute turned military standoff. History books will argue about blame. They will cite Trump's words: European hesitation, American impatience, institutional inertia. None of that will bring back the dead or restore the lost decades of stability. Because there are deaths, not millions at first. Just enough to poison the future. An aircraft goes down. A ship burns. A base is hit. Each incident demands response. Response demands escalation. Escalation feeds itself. Nuclear weapons remain unused. Not because people are wise, but because everyone understands that pressing that button ends the conversation forever. The shadow is enough. The human cost becomes visible in quieter ways. PTSD without parades. Refugees from countries that were never bombed, but simply stopped functioning. A generation that grows up knowing alliances are temporary and security is rented. Eventually, the fighting slows. Not because peace is achieved, but because exhaustion sets in. Ceasefires are signed without handshakes. Greenland remains NATO exists in name only. The US stands alone, powerful and isolated, and eyeing a downfall like Britishers did. The New World Order is colder, sharper, less forgiving. Power replaces principle openly. Smaller states hedge constantly. Big states coerce more efficiently. Trust becomes the rarest resource on Earth. And somewhere beneath the Arctic ice, the minerals remain untouched, silent, mocking everyone. This is the cost of confusing strength with control. This is what happens when alliances are treated like real estate deals. This is what happens when geography, ego, and history collide without humility. The war over Greenland does not end the world. It teaches it a lesson it will never forget. That even the most stable systems can tear themselves apart when fear speaks louder than reason. The screen fades. Not to relieve, but to nace. Because the terrifying part is not that this scenario is extreme. It's that every step along the way feels completely plausible. And once you see that, you can't unsee it.